the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
We're living in a world where donors are evolving, their expectations are changing, and the same old fundraising tricks don't always cut it. So how can your organization not only keep up, but stand out in the midst of this dynamic landscape? Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Jena, nonprofit advocate here at Donorbox. We are here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. And today, I am so excited. I am joined by Brittan Stockert, our fundraising strategist here at Donorbox. Welcome, Brittan.
Thanks for having me, Jena.
Today's episode is all about making fundraising way more interesting for your donors. We are talking about experiential fundraising, so creating memorable experiences that your donors will love. Now, Britt, you've had extensive experience juggling both executive director and development director roles at different human services agencies. You've leaned on traditional fundraising tactics like year-end giving campaigns, direct mail, and annual fundraiser events. Given your background, what led you to explore experiential fundraising, and why do you think it's gaining importance in today's nonprofit landscape?
Absolutely, Jena, you're right. I have worked in both executive and development director roles. I've seen the same challenges most of our nonprofits are facing, right, in keeping their strategies effective and engaging. And, we know traditional methods, they really do have their place, but we're navigating a very fast-paced moving donor landscape. And this is a good time to reassess and diversify our approaches. And if you think about it, all of these traditional events like year-end campaigns and annual fundraisers, they've kind of been our bread and butter, right? For a lot of our nonprofits, we know they make a significant portion of our strategies. And don't get me wrong, they have their merits, right? We love them so much. They bring in the dollars. They provide a platform for engaging our donors. But there's some data out there that talks about these concerning trends. And what we're seeing is a decline in individual donor giving and a drop in Giving Tuesday donors, which kind of goes to signal, maybe relying solely on those events might not be the most strategic move. And so as fundraisers, we really need to pause and reflect and think really beyond these transactions, right? This is kind of where experiential fundraising comes into play. It really allows us to build these authentic connections with our donors and kind of get away from events that really lack lasting impact.
It's clear that the landscape is evolving and traditional tactics, while still valuable, might not be sufficient on their own. So I want to dive into the shift from traditional to experiential fundraising. You just talked about the decline in individual donor giving and the drop in Giving Tuesday donors as indicators of changing donor behavior. Can you share with our listeners some more insights into these trends and why nonprofits should be paying attention to this?
So there are trends happening, right? We're seeing these big shifts in what donors are expecting from us. What we know about our donors today is they're looking for more than these transactional relationships, right? With our nonprofits. They really are yearning for a deeper connection to the causes they support. I think this decline in individual donor giving, it really kind of indicates that the same old traditional approaches that we're using are not resonating as effectively as they used to. I think about this old saying, Jena, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Donors want to understand the why behind the causes they're supporting. And this is where experiential fundraising kind of comes into play, where it aligns with this shift. It offers more than a typical transaction. It creates kind of this space, this opportunity for donors to actively participate where they're feeling a genuine connection to the mission.
I want to dive deeper into the concept of experiential fundraising. Admittedly, when I started learning about this, it was intimidating to me because it does feel like this big overarching concept. But with you and I talking about it, it doesn't have to be. So can you break down what exactly is it and how does it differ from these traditional fundraising methods?
I would say think of it as a transformative shift in how we connect and build those deeper relationships with our donors. Our traditional methods, think of them as very transactional, right? It's a very superficial, surface level aspect of giving. Whereas experiential fundraising, it really transcends that. It's immersive, it's personalized, it's really tailored to making donors live and feel your mission, if that makes sense. And so I think of it as really getting away from this one-size-fits-all approach to creating these really customizable, tailored experiences, which, these experiences, it goes beyond that fleeting emotional appeals, and it builds this deeper and lasting emotional connection.
You have outlined 3 characteristics of experiential fundraising. So that personalized engagement, immersive interactions, and weaving in authentic narratives into the approach as well. So can you break down each of these and explain why they're important and why it makes up the whole donor experience?
So let's go ahead and start with personalized engagement. Let's think about how do we recognize our donors, right? As individuals, they each come with their own values, their motivations, and interest. And when we're talking about personalized engagement, it's really about moving away from the generic appeals that we kind of get caught up in that cycle of sending, and instead really crafting appeals that are tailored to what each individual donor loves. One example might be if a donor is passionate about education, involving them in a hands-on educational initiative that can really kind of build that connection. So thinking about immersive interactions kind of as a way of making your donors active participants in your mission. It's no longer about them being passive contributors. Experiential fundraising, it's creating these opportunities to engage directly with your organization's work. Another key is weaving authentic narratives into your approach. It's really that storytelling piece. How are you connecting deeply with your donors through these narratives, through these stories? What that can look like are success stories. You can share firsthand beneficiary testimonials. All of those immersive experiences, weaving those authentic narratives in all of your donor interactions, it really builds, it adds depth, and it adds context.
To illustrate the power of experiential fundraising, I know that we've got some really great real-life case studies of Donorbox organizations that have rolled out some nice experiential fundraisers. We have Refugee Hope Partners and Man Down Cornwall. So can you walk us through these examples of these campaigns or events or experiences and highlight the strategies that made them successful?
For sure. Refugee Hope Partners, they did something really cool. They organized an open house event called Taste and See. They tapped into our Donorbox events feature. And what I really loved about this event was it was family friendly. They featured small plates from some of the top restaurants in Raleigh. And despite minimal planning, I would say it was quite impressive where they raised $13,000. They attracted 216 new ticket buyers, and each donor contributed about $120 each. I would say what really stood out here and made their event so successful was their creativity with their ticketing features. They offered different prices, including early bird deals and flash sales. Their event was convenient. It was inclusive, making it kid-friendly, and only lasted 3 hours. And what I especially loved was they kind of weaved in multi-sensory elements, cultural elements, the ingredients in their food, where it wasn't just your typical chicken and rice pilaf, right, that we get at a lot of the galas and auctions we attend. They weaved in a cultural performance. They brought in art. And what this did was it brought their cause to life.
Yeah, they did a really fantastic job with that event. And like you said, it's immersing people in these experiences. So with this, with the food, with the music, with the art, they really tapped into their guest senses, into all of their senses. They're seeing, they're tasting, they're feeling. So that is an experience, and that's incredible. Now moving on to Man Down Cornwall's fundraising campaign. Tell us about that.
Yes, Jena, Man Down Cornwall, a very cool nonprofit focused in the UK. They provide support to foster stronger mental and emotional health. They really elevated their fundraising strategies by tapping into the power of competition and collaboration. And I would say what they did was fabulous. People don't just want to give for self-interest purposes. They really want to be part of a movement and a team. And so Man Down Cornwall, they embraced Donorbox's peer-to-peer feature. They launched a leadership board in a competition. They threw out incentives, and that really created a sense of camaraderie where, gosh, I think it was 110 fundraisers, this pool of 110 fundraisers. Together, they raised $178,000 from nearly 3,000 donors. And this speaks to the power of leadership boards. Who doesn't love the competitive edge? And again, it kind of speaks to the power of collective giving, right?
Anybody who listens to the podcast or attends our webinars knows that I love peer-to-peer, and this organization did such a good job. You don't have to have a ton of initial fundraisers to make a big impact. So like you said, they started with a pool of 110 fundraisers. They got them involved, got the buy-in, because who doesn't love a good competition? And they raised all that money from 3,000 donors. So you're just casting a wider net there. And that's what made this an experience, right? They are becoming active participants. This is great. We've talked a bit about technology, and I want to talk about it a little bit more. How can technology, like how these organizations have used, how can technology complement experiential fundraising efforts?
There are some amazing technologies that are out there. You might already be using them. You know, they're affordable, right? They're accessible. They're right here. First up, we have Text-to-Give. We're living in this fast-paced world, right? We're all busy. Our attention spans are shorter. Immediacy is key. And I kind of think about the way I feel when I get a text message. I feel the immediate need to respond. And that's what Text-to-Give replicates. It kind of brings giving to the forefront. It makes it an instant, intangible part of the experience. And it adds a level of convenience and realness to the donor's interaction. We also have fundraising goal-meters. People really want to see the impact that they're making tied directly to their contribution. And so this is kind of a great visual way to show the power of collective giving. Goal-meters provide a transparent, a visual representation of the progress toward a fundraising goal. And it really kind of creates excitement, right? It motivates other donors to kind of want to show up and contribute. We also have donation kiosk. Donorbox has an amazing one called Live Kiosk. And what that does is it brings the digital experience into the real world. At events, these kiosks allow donors to contribute easily and seamlessly. And it's really all about making the act of giving more immediate and interactive. So Jena, I would say these technologies, when strategically integrated, they can really transform, they can really elevate those donor interactions to give those immersive experiences that we're talking about.
It's all about capturing generosity in a way that's convenient and flexible, right? And it's definitely become a major part of creating those immersive experiences. Beyond fundraising tech, I've seen organizations that have explored virtual reality, so VR, and augmented reality, AR, for an immersive donor experience. We've talked a lot about some of these really cool ways to help people feel and see the mission at work. And bringing it back down a level, something a little bit more accessible, like personalized video messages or stories, are another impactful way to weave in those authentic narratives with technology in a way that's not very intimidating as well. Now, for nonprofits looking to implement experiential fundraising, where should they start? What are some practical steps they can take to incorporate a more active element into their strategies to engage their donors?
Gosh, Jena, great question. I am a big picture type of thinker, and let's keep it simple, right? It doesn't have to be completely complex. Stick to these guiding principles and let's talk about them. Let's break it down. First and foremost, no matter what we do, right, we really need to understand our organization's core values. What drives their mission? If, for example, your nonprofit focuses on environmental conservation, your core values might look like sustainability, biodiversity, and community. So get some clarity on these kind of core values that represent your organization's character and your identity. And then from there, we really need to kind of move to understanding our donors, taking a look at our existing donors, taking a look at our ideal donors. We need to, identify their preferences. What makes them tick? What are their interests? What are their hobbies? What type of things do they value? How do they prefer to interact with our organization? Do they love to support online campaigns as opposed to your in-person events? You're going to really wrap around all of the things to really dive in and to better understand your donors, just as you would with your good, dear best friend or your partner. And one example I have is if your cause, for whatever reason, I'm sticking to environmental focus, but if your cause aligns with environmental awareness, your ideal donors might be individuals who might be really passionate about nature, sustainability advocates, eco-conscious businesses. So get to know your values of your organization, really dive deep in understanding your donors. And from there, what that's going to create space for is brainstorming ideas about these very immersive, interactive experiences that'll really capture and retain your donors in the long run. If your nonprofit supports animal welfare, consider organizing a virtual tour of an animal sanctuary you partner with, allowing donors to virtually interact with rescued animals. And like all things, right, we all need to check for feasibility. Evaluate the practicality and the resources needed for each idea. Do we have the budget? Do we have staffing capacity? Do we really have the resources needed to execute these immersive experiences that we're talking about? And from there, you're going to get buy-in from your stakeholders and start detailing all of these winning ideas.
So for our listeners, we've actually gone into deeper detail on these steps and put together a really helpful brainstorming activity workbook that guides you through each of these steps, thinking about your mission, thinking about your vision, your core values, really detailing who your donors are, who your ideal donors are, and guiding you through the very end of the planning process. So you can find the link to download that workbook in the show notes. Okay, as we wrap up, any final tips or advice for nonprofits embarking on this experiential fundraising journey?
I would say, as nonprofits, as we're diving deeper into this cool concept of experiential fundraising, my final tip would be stay closely connected to your core values. Don't lose sight of them. We have great momentum, right? We have these amazing ideas, but we need to make sure that they align with our values, our guiding principles, and let's put them at the forefront to really shine through in every donor experience that we're creating. I would also say, Jena, don't be afraid to think outside of the box. Let creativity kind of be your ally in crafting these memorable experiences, but keep in mind that feasibility, right? That might look like starting small. And lastly, Jena, I would say keep your donors at the heart, at the center of it all. They really are these true allies. They're our true partners in making our missions happen. So understand their preferences, listen to their feedback, and really kind of leverage their insight to continually enhance our fundraising experiences that we're creating with them.
Britt, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been so fun having you.
Hey, it's been such a pleasure, Jena. Always lovely to connect with you.
And to our listeners, before we wrap up, I want to address a concern that might be on the minds of some of you. You might be thinking, how can we host an immersive experience if our nonprofit has limited to no capacity? Creating immersive experiences can be challenging, especially for small nonprofits with limited resources. But as Britt said, it's totally doable with a little bit more creativity, strategic planning, and collaboration. So a few key pointers I'd say is make the most of your collaborations and partnerships and in-kind support to stretch your resources. And as Britt said, while it may be tempting to pursue these big ideas, start small. Test the waters before committing to a large-scale experiential event. And this will really allow you to learn and adapt without overextending your resources. And it also helps to pitch to your boards when investing in a larger event. So remember, the essence of experiential fundraising is about creating a meaningful connection with your donors. And that doesn't always have to require a large budget. Take that first step, even if it's a small one. The journey to engaging and retaining your donors is about progress, not perfection, right? For more in-depth insights and examples, be sure to check out the show notes. We've got a great blog article on experiential fundraising and that brainstorming workbook waiting for you. Thank you for choosing to spend time with the Nonprofit Podcast today. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Be sure to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review, or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review is a great way to help others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. Until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, it's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone, from frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers. Our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.